And this is also to kind of clarify what do we mean by these big words, sustainable just cities, that I already mentioned many times, and kind of the perspective that we use to look at that. So a very important starting point when I talk about this transformative perspective on sustainable and just cities is that if you look at the societal challenges that we're facing today, whether they're economic, social, or ecological, that they are very interconnected, and that when we want to tackle these challenges, innovation is not enough. We need innovation, social innovation, technological innovation, but we also need systemic transformative change, what we at Drift would call transitions towards more just and sustainable societies. We also need innovation, but it needs to be of a particular kind. So we say that innovations are transformative. So if you look at, for instance, urban innovation projects, these can be transformative if they challenge, alter, and or replace the dominant structures and institutions in the social context. So if you take the example of renewable energy, so this phenomenon that people are producing their own energy, this is only transformative to the extent that it really challenges, alters, and or replaces the underlying energy system, which is centralized, fossil fuel based, and utterly polluting. And then also underlying that, the more fundamental economic system of unbridled capitalism and extractivism. So we've been studying these issues of transformative innovation and the relation between innovation initiatives and transformative processes in several projects, which I'm not going to bother you with. But one that I want to shortly mention is the Urbana project, because the Urbana project focuses really on sustainable just cities. And what we're doing, to put it very, 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 very short, we are creating a community of practice around sustainable just cities of European city makers, but also city thinkers, as we call them, and to kind of bring, because there's a lot of research going on, a lot of different projects, and we're trying to bring these people together to create this open source knowledge commons, like an open source database, the wiki on sustainable just cities, which you can all use and edit and add to. And we organized all sorts of events, podcasts, we share videos on YouTube, and so on. So feel free to have a look. And why do we focus on cities? Because for many years, I think for almost 15 years or 14 years, I was always very reluctant to go with what I call the urban obsession, because there's of course so much that is not in cities. But it's not about stating that it's only about looking at cities, but there is a particular interest in cities for three reasons. One is that they have a very important role in causing the societal challenges that we were talking about. So they are kind of part of the problem in how our cities are organized. But at the same time, there are also the places where the kind of the suffering, the results, the damage of these societal challenges becomes most concentrated, and where the consequences of these challenges are felt the most. But then at the same time, on a more positive note, it's also where so many people come together that there's a lot of option for creativity and innovation. So there is a lot going on in cities, which makes them particularly interesting to study sustainability and justice. So what do we mean by sustainable just cities? And of course, we could have a 2-hour webinar just about that question. We follow this definition by Broto and Castán Broto and Westman that say that cities, sustainable just cities are those that meet the following 4 conditions: improving the quality of life and well-being, meeting the needs of both present and future generations, enabling justice and equity, and living within ecosystem limits. Now, obviously, I think it's very difficult to find a city that fulfills all of this. So a transition perspective also means accepting that it's not about measuring whether or not a city fulfills all that, but much more looking at processes towards that, so striving for that. So this is more like a future vision that cities and all sorts of urban initiatives are working towards. Environmental justice, again, very big term that I'm definitely not a full expert on yet, maybe one day. So I'm quite new to this particular field, which is very vast. But just to share a few basic things for people who are less familiar with it. that it's important that it's beyond inclusivity, equality, and equity. These are important parts of justice, but justice goes beyond that. So justice is about distributive justice. So it's really about how resources and services are distributed and ensuring that this is done in an equitable way. But it's also about procedural justice. So about the kind of the decision making and how to make that participatory and democratic. And last but not least, the recognition justice, which is much more fundamental and deeper. It's about recognizing the historical context. So when all the discussions about institutional racism that we have seen also in the past months, these are really about recognition justice, about seeing how underlying structures can be unjust. These are three famous dimensions of environmental justice, but there are many others. And if you would like to learn more about this, I can really recommend the work of our colleagues at the Barcelona Lab for Urban Environmental Justice and Sustainability, who kind of really broadened this idea of justice much further beyond this trilogy towards many more different dimensions. And we work with them also in the Urbana project. And if you're not for reading all the kind of more academic literature, one of the things they've done in the Urbana project, which I really love, is they made this overview of 10 drivers of injustice in the context of urban sustainability. And they made mini videos for each of these. So if you would like to not read, but hear and see something, I can really recommend this. So as I said, I don't consider myself an expert on environmental justice. So our contribution to this field is very much from the perspective of social innovation and transition. So really looking at processes of change and innovation and how these are contributing to more sustainable and just cities. And my specific specialization therein is power. So the question of how power relations are being changed and how people empower each other to change urban environments. And again, I think we can organize another webinar about power, but just to give an impression, one of the work I've done is to really look at how different power theories and different power dimensions, what would those mean for studying innovation and transitions in the urban context. So one of the things I hope to do in the coming years is to kind of apply these different power theories and dimensions to understand how urban innovation and transitions are occurring. And a third perspective, very important, is this idea of translocal connections. Because when you look at cities, you often, there is a very important place for having a local perspective and kind of having a place-based perspective. But at the same time, you see that a lot of these initiatives, they are unique and they are locally embedded, but at the same time, they're also globally connected. So in one of our previous projects, we studied all these different social movements, many of them that have a lot of urban initiatives. And they're very locally embedded, but at the same time, they're also connected through all sorts of regional, national, and also global networks. So for instance, if you take an urban garden initiative, for instance, it's like hyper local. But if they are, for instance, connected to the transition network, they're also part of this global network. And our finding has been that it's this particular connection between the local and the global that is particularly empowering, because on the one hand, people are seeing the direct results of their efforts in their environment. And at the same time, they have this sense of broader impact across the world. And one of the things we've done, we collaborated with a social psychologist to see how this translocal empowerment works also psychologically. So how is it that people experience this empowerment? So that's all very nice, but at the same time, one of the things that is still lacking is a more critical power political perspective on, okay, it's all very nice to see that these networks are empowering and that people are feel empowered to work on innovation. But one of the main ongoing research questions is, what is the actual countervailing power of all these innovation initiatives across different cities and all these networks? what is their actual countervailing power to really challenge the underlying systems, and how can this countervailing power be increased? So one of the things that we're doing in the coming half year in collaboration with the Sonnet project, Social Innovation and Energy Transitions, where we work with research institutes across Europe, but we also work with 6 cities, Bristol, Warsaw, Grenoble, Antwerp, Mannheim, and Basel. And one of the things we're doing is organizing a power lab where this question about countervailing power will be the central question. So to really ask, what is the actual transformative countervailing power that all these innovation initiatives in energy across these cities have? How can it be increased? So also, how could these cities collaborate to really have a transformative impact? If you have any experience also with power labs, I would be glad to hear it. To finalize, I think it's important to think about how to politicize or repoliticize our research. And there I obviously don't mean how to affiliate it to a political party, absolutely not, but much more to be aware of what are the politics behind the processes that we study. So the moment that we study issues of sustainability and justice, there's a lot of politics involved. And also to realize how our research can be used or maybe abused in those political processes. So it's not so much about becoming political ourselves or affiliating ourselves, but much more about being aware about that. And I think we are currently at a very political moment where we have increasing divides between different generations, different economic classes, different ethnicities, and we have also increasing divides on the political spectrum between left and right. I don't think I need to explain much about that. And all these divides are kind of further increasing and fueling each other. So I think there's a real responsibility, and I think a very big theme in that is this tension between ecological sustainability and social economic justice and how these two relate. So I think it's a real responsibility for us as researchers to look at that relation between the justice aspect and the ecological sustainability aspect. So with that, I would like to finish my 10, 11 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, comments, you can contact me or ask me in the final Q&A round.